Hello and welcome to the Modern Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Billie Tarascio, joined today by my good friend and national immigration attorney, Jim Hacking. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Billy.
It's good to see you. I'm so happy that you're here. My inbox is blown up with questions about immigration. And so thank you for taking your time today to educate us and answer some of these questions. So I'm just going to rapid fire. Actually, Jim, tell people a little bit about you and your firm and what you do.
Sure. So we are an immigration law firm. We've practiced immigration only since 2012. My wife and I run and own the law firm together. It's an interesting time to be an immigration lawyer. We're going to be busy here. Our inbox and telephone calls are also through the roof. We had 170 calls yesterday to the firm, and the intake team's going sort of nuts.
Yeah, I bet they are. Okay, so let's jump.
I'm sorry. People are really scared. I do a YouTube live show called the Immigration Answer Show, and I will just say there have been grown men crying on every episode for the last 7 days. So it's a really hard, scary time for a lot of people. So I'm sure you are getting lots of inquiries from your family law clients.
Yeah, people just want to know. They have a lot of concerns. And there's a lot of misconceptions. So let's just dive into what we know. So we know that Trump was elected and he is supposed to carry out mass deportations, and that he has appointed Tom Homan as his border czar.
Right.
What does that mean for people in Arizona who might have varying status levels?
Okay, great. So I think that once they get into office, you're going to see sort of the approach in Arizona go across the country. Like, I've always been surprised at how intense law enforcement is in Arizona, at how much border protection is present in Arizona. I know I went to a QT once and there were like 3 CBP officials and then some state troopers. And I know that they drive around in those really big SUVs. So I've always sort of walked around in Arizona with my eyes sort of wide open, looking around. And you know, the big issue with Arizona and other border states is there's a provision under the law that allows for expedited removal for people that are caught within a certain distance from the border. And I remember when Trump came into office that one of the things they quickly did was really try to expand that distance of what constituted expedited removal territory. And I imagine that's what they'll do again now, that they'll really try to shift to enforcement only. They're going to try to limit due process. They're going to try to limit people from being able to see judges. And so I think that anybody who's out of status is going to be in real trouble and at real risk of being put into deportation. I think we're going to see a lot of sort of shock and awe in the first 2 months. They're going to try to get everybody convinced that this is how it's going to be for the next 4 years. They're really going to try to sidestep the courts, sidestep review from people other than the executive branch. And I think they're really going to try to demoralize the immigrant community and get a whole lot of fear going right away. I don't know if you remember, Billy, but a lot of my clients are from Muslim countries, and the Muslim ban came in. I think it was the second Saturday after the inauguration. That was something that Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon basically thought up on the back of a napkin. And there was like no rulemaking, no, they didn't follow any of the typical procedures, and they knew that they weren't doing that, and they were okay with doing it because they were happy with the chaos. They were happy with the strife and turmoil. And, one thing I've been saying a lot this week is the cruelty is a feature, not a bug. It's something that's baked into everything that they're trying to do. It's not incidental. It's on purpose.
Okay, I'm going to take a big step back. So deportation, what is the process of deportation, or are there multiple processes?
Well, in the typical situation, what would happen is if you are here as an immigrant and the government believes that you are subject to deportation, subject to removal, they would issue you what is called a notice to appear. A notice to appear can be issued by USCIS, which handles traditional immigration. It can be issued by Immigration Customs Enforcement, whose job it is to kick people out of the country, or it could be issued by Customs and Border Patrol, either at the border or after they catch someone after the border. And in the notice to appear, it would say, your name is Jim Hacking. You are not a citizen of the United States. You are a citizen of Honduras. Upon information and belief, you entered the United States on May 3rd, 2022. You had a visa at that time, or you entered without inspection. Your status in the United States expired on such and such a date, and you're not in current possession of a valid visa to be present in the United States. So those are the factual allegations. I said this yesterday to my team, it's a whole lot packed into a single page. Then underneath that are the statutory provisions that render you deportable. And then what's supposed to be on there is a notice of hearing, the location, date, and time of your deportation hearing. And if you're not in expedited removal, eventually you would have a court date, and you would then appear at that court date. You would admit or deny the factual allegations as to what your status is. You would admit or deny the statutory basis for removal. And then you'd also have the right to raise any defenses to removal, like I deserve asylum in the United States, or I deserve cancellation of removal, or whatever other legal reasons are that you think you have to stay in the United States as a defense to deportation. And then eventually the judge is going to set that for hearing. So right now, while Joe Biden is still president, the courts are severely backlogged. Where I live in Missouri, the immigration court is in Kansas City. The immigration court in Kansas City covers, I think, 7 or 9 states. There are 3 judges who have 55,000 files in front of them. Okay. So this idea that they're going to be able to ramp up the machine, I suppose they're going to try. I suppose they're going to put a lot of resources in it. I just don't know how effective it'll be. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of the things that Trump said he was going to do the first time didn't come to fruition. But I will say that last time there were a lot of institutional people within the cabinet and within Homeland Security that sort of slowed his roll, didn't let him do all the things. And he's promising to bring in all these sycophants and people that worship him and will do whatever he says. And the thought there is that things will be a lot more effective. But, we'll do what we can to slow that stuff. Can I cuss on here? To slow that down.
So he's going to have to, they're going to need to build more immigration courts, hire more judges, hire more prosecutors in order to do this mass deportation. And everybody who is rounded up or accused of being deportable will have the ability to go to court and go through due process and put on defense. Is that correct?
It is, except for 2 things. One, how broadly will they classify people subject to expedited removal? Because that strips away a lot of those defenses that you just raised. And more importantly, and what I'm worried about right now, and I was just texting a friend who works on the Capitol trying to lobby for sort of pro-immigrant legislation or provisions. The thing I'm worried about the most right now is with a Republican-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate, and Donald Trump pushing this as his major goal, could they gut the Immigration and Nationality? Could they actually change the law? I don't know if they need to have, I don't know if the Senate would let them do that because of the filibuster and the 60 votes that they would need to do that. But they're pretty damn close to being in the position to do whatever the hell they want with the Immigration and Nationality Act. And that could strip a lot of those provisions, which are the most bare bone, basic provisions. I mean, when people think about immigration court, they think of a trial or television. I was showing the team a John Oliver segment he did when Trump was president the first time, and there was an old immigration judge, a former immigration judge, who said, "We are handling death penalty cases in a traffic court. These hearings are an hour and a half long. You get an hour to convince a judge that you need to be here." Because, I mean, even if those 3 judges in Kansas City handled all 55,000 cases, if they did 4 a day each, I mean, they'd be here for 30 years.
Where are people held pending this hearing?
Yeah, so there are provisions in the Immigration Nationality Act that govern what's called mandatory detention. So certain people, like aggravated felons, people who have entered the United States repeatedly, are subject to mandatory detention. It's all defined in statute and regulation. So most people who are facing deportation are walking around in society. They're not subject to detention. So that's another plan, or part of the Project 2025 and the Trump plan, is to expand detention, because detention is always used as a hammer to get people to throw in the towel and say, "I'm so sick of being in detention, I'll just leave." So one of the things I really want to expand is who is detained, prevent us from having bond hearings, prevent us from being able to demonstrate that people aren't a risk to society and that they should be out on bond, which current law provides that they would be entitled to at least make the argument after being in custody for 2 or 3 weeks.
If someone does qualify for expedited removal, and I do want to ask, like, do you know how much of Arizona qualifies for that expedited removal?
It should be 100 miles, but I think during Trump time, it was the whole state. And plus, you have to remember, Arizona is one of those states, I believe, that for the most part, the entire state gladly and happily complies with what are called ICE detainers. So in a lot of so-called sanctuary cities or liberal cities, the police departments are smart enough to know that they don't have the resources to do all the immigration enforcement that the federal government wants to do, especially in Trumplandia, right? So like in LA or Chicago, they have these policies that they are not going to help enforce federal immigration law on behalf of ICE. They're going to make ICE do their own thing. And so they won't necessarily honor when ICE says, we want you to hold someone. They don't just pick up the phone every chance they get. So even if people aren't within the expedited removal area, my understanding is that for most of Arizona, the chiefs of police and these cities are happy to have their police officers work hand in hand with ICE to turn over people as quickly as possible.
I would say that that's absolutely true. And we just, a week ago passed a ballot measure that makes it a state crime to enter the state unlawfully. So kind of mirroring that Texas law that is currently being challenged. So that law in Arizona isn't going to go into effect until the Texas law kind of gets sorted out. But yes, let's assume that Arizona is going to comply. And there is a lot of motivation to go along with that steeplechase.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, I tell them you want to have no interaction with law enforcement because it could be a traffic stop. It could be, you could get hit by a drunk driver. And if you're the undocumented person, you're the one that's going to face the most severe consequences. You're going to be the one facing deportation.
I have so many questions. So
sure.
If they're doing the expedited removal, do they still go get a court hearing and get to go to court and get the ability to be out on bond?
No, very rarely, very rarely. Most likely they would just be held until they're sent back to their home country.
Okay, so there's no defense at that point.
It's pretty limited, yeah.
Okay. The Tom Homan, that's his name, right? Tom Homan?
That's his name.
Okay, so he has this very famous interview where he was asked, is there a way that you can deport people without separating families? And his answer was, sure, you can just deport the families, which implies that he would be deporting children born here who are citizens. Or spouses who are legal. Is that legal?
No, I believe that's part of the fear and the shock and awe that I was talking about that they're trying to instill in people. What it would say is they will happily deport the parents of U.S. citizens, knowing that even though no judge is going to say that the children have to leave, the children still have to leave because they have to live with their parents, right? So either the parents are either going to be forced to take them back to Mexico or whatever country it is, or they're going to have to leave them here in the care and custody of a U.S. citizen.
Don't those children then become wards of the state?
They could. In theory, yeah. In theory, they sure could.
Okay. All right. There's also regulations right now limiting the amount of time that children can be, in cages.
Yeah, those will go. So I don't know if you remember, but on day one of every presidency, but especially with Trump and Biden, this is the problem of having a broken immigration system, of having a Congress that is so polarized that you can't get anything done, that when someone becomes president, the executive branch has like all the power in determining and interpreting federal immigration law. So when Trump took office in 2017, he literally got sworn. He went to the White House and just started signing executive orders. That's I think where the Muslim ban came in, or shortly thereafter. And when Biden came in, he came in and signed a bunch of orders to change interpretation, change rules on day 1 and 2. So that would be something that I think that that Trump would do away with. I think he's going to try to do away with DACA. He's going to try to do away with what's called the diversity visa, which is we have 50,000 visas available every year for people from underrepresented countries. They're going to stop accepting any refugees. So this year we hit a record high of, I think, about 120,000 refugees from around the world, thereby fulfilling our international obligations. And he'll cut that down to zero. So there's a lot that he can do really early. I have a lot of people who are asking me, Jim, what do you think? Like, if I already have my green card, will I still be able to become a citizen? And what I'm telling people is, I think that they're really going to focus more on not letting anyone else into the country. I think they're still going to focus on kicking people out. But I think for people already in the process, I think they're going to have a hard time trying to strip away rights that people are already sort of underway to obtain.
That's great news. So do you think that they're going to do away with DACA, which is temporary?
Yeah, I think they're going to do away. I mean, those morons couldn't pull it off for 4 years. They literally tried twice to stop DACA. And, just like when Biden announced the parole in place program for parents, the Republican attorneys general all ran down to that court in Eastern District of Texas to find a happy judge. When Trump tries this stuff, the liberal lawyers and immigration lawyers will file suit in the Ninth Circuit to try to make case law to stop things nationwide, or at least in the Ninth Circuit. So they tried and weren't able to kill off DACA, but I think they're going to try a whole lot harder. I mean, Trump didn't even start trying to get rid of DACA for the first 2 years. Back in those first 2 years of his presidency, he was still acting like he had a heart and somewhat cared for these kids.
So people who are here on temporary status, like DACA or another temporary status, what should they be doing?
I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. There's not much to do. There's no line to get into. There's no fine to pay. There's no form to fill out. I think that's another thing that's going to go away besides DACA is temporary protected status. So like people from Haiti, Venezuela, I think all those provisions are going to go away as well.
Do you think that there will be some sort of process created so that law-abiding people who are here illegally, but otherwise are members of our society and work and pay taxes and kids and are part of the community, will there be a way for them to obtain citizenship?
Mm.
What about the fact that wrecks our industries? It wrecks farming. We'll have a food shortage. What about that?
I don't know. Elon Musk says weird things, including that sort of we need to go through a depression of some sort, that we need to have a correction, that, tariffs plus kicking out all of our essential workers is the way to go. That's this theory that they have. So no, that's all built in. That's what they want. I just remember that Republican National Convention and all those people waving the mass deportation signs. This is what they ran on. This is what they wanted. And this is what the American people voted for. 5 million people more for Trump than Kamala. It boggles my mind, but no, I don't think, even if Kamala had won the election, what it's going to take to actually get Congress to give a path to citizenship for these 13 million people who are here without status, I don't think it would have happened, just because, like I said, but the parties are so diametrically opposed, and everybody just listens to the fringes because of gerrymandering.
Yeah, Jim, I think this is an issue kind of like abortion, where most people in this country, regardless of your political affiliation, do believe that those law-abiding citizens who've been here a long time, who are part of our community, who are sort of a victim of the fact that we've never had a system that has allowed them to become citizens, most people in this country want those people to have a path to citizenship.
That's true.
All right, so you don't have any necessarily direction for people that they should take at this point. Who needs to be seeing an immigration attorney?
Well, we still have 2 months. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're telling everybody to file whatever you can as soon as possible. We are actually suing over a lot of cases that are delayed in the hopes that they're going to get adjudicated under the Biden regime versus the Trump regime. 4 years is a really long time to try to outlast somebody. There are a lot of people here who outlasted Trump the last time. I just don't know what it's going to look like come January. But, what we now have to have those conversations with our clients, Billy, on sort of the long shot cases or the sort of messy cases, because one of the provisions of Project 2025 is if you apply for any immigration benefit, and if that benefit is denied for whatever reason, including USCIS error, that it's an automatic issuance of a notice to appear to go to see the immigration judge, even if you're a lawful permanent resident, which is completely effed up, contrary to law, and would involve changes to the law. But that's what they're going to try, I think.
It has to be a violation of due process, because that means even if you're here legally, even if you're a citizen, if we screw up, you're gone. That's what that means.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. And I think they'll have to limit that. But yeah, it's like if you have, some people have their green cards for 20 years. So the theory is you've been here for 20 years, you've never gotten in trouble, you followed the law every single time, you file for renewal, USCIS makes a mistake on your renewal, which they do all the time. And then they say it's denied and you're going to immigration court. You probably still get out of immigration court, but that's a pain.
Okay. So in the past, you've not necessarily taken those cases forward. And now you're going to be having much more serious conversations with your clients about whether or not that might be worth it.
Yeah, like there's a lot of discretion at USCIS. So like if your spouse was in the United States without permission and snuck in without permission, overstayed, and they needed a waiver, a lot of times whether or not you get the waivers has a ton of discretion to the government. So if you're going to be asking for discretion from the Trump team, which is going to be inclined to rule against you, then do you really want to raise your hand and say, well, yeah, here's my address? That's the big problem with DACA. I remember when DACA first started, people were like, I don't know if we should have our clients apply for DACA because if and when some anti-immigrant guy comes in, they're going to have fingerprints, social security numbers, dates of birth, all that stuff, and very easy to find. And that's what they're going to use to start rounding people up.
That's my next question. So in the worst possible universe, Trump was threatening using the military to knock on doors. But it sounds like it's more likely that they've got a list and a register, and they're going to be going to the homes of people who are undocumented.
As crazy as that sounds, even just to hear you say it out loud or for me to think it, yeah, I think that's what they're going to do.
So would you advise that people move? Because I might think about moving.
Well, I'll just say this. Every immigrant has an obligation to, upon moving, update their AR-11, their address within 10 business days.
Got it.
And, we're officers of the court, so I can only tell people to follow the law, but I understand what you're saying.
I didn't know that, so I wasn't telling you for the break.
No, man. Well, good. It was good thinking.
Oh, man. Jim, I know you have a lot of time, and I appreciate you getting on with me so quickly. We will get this published as soon as possible, and then probably see if you've got some time later down the road to come back.
For sure. I know this was short, but maybe after the new year we could do it again.
Let's do it. And now, do people need to be in Missouri to contact you?
Immigration's federal. We handle cases all over the country.
And so how do people find you?
Probably on TikTok at Immigration Hacking or on YouTube, Immigration Answers Show. We also have a Facebook group with like 14,000 people in there, called Immigrant Home, and people can go in there, ask questions, post, find out stuff about us. I do a live call-in show 3 or 4 times a week on the YouTube channel. So just subscribe to the channel and they'll get updated whenever we either go live or make a new video.
Appreciate you, Jim. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Billy. Good seeing you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Arizona podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, make sure to download it, like it, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you know someone who would be a good guest or you would like to be on the Modern Arizona podcast, make sure to give us an email or reach out to us at mymodernlaw.com.